a phone call. Just went just did it for a second, so I'm sorry.
Okay, because we are live now. Hello, everyone. I am here with a special guest, Victor Oddo. How are you doing today, Victor?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking. How are you doing? It's good to be here.
I'm doing very, very well myself. So, not sure how many of my own viewers know who you are, so I will let you introduce yourself.
Sure. So I have a YouTube channel. The new YouTube channel is just named Victor Oddo, and I help people. As I say, I help people navigate their spiritual awakening process. And that's just like a life transformation process that I found myself in sort of randomly, unexpectedly, that was very noticeable to me. I knew something really significant was going on with me. There's a lot of different symptoms and weird experiences I was having. And I saw no real, so there was nothing out there that could help me. I eventually looked and found some books that were somewhat helpful, but anyway, it was a tough process, very highly beneficial. Glad to be going through it. So anyway, I created a YouTube channel to try to help people like my younger self, people who find themselves going through this process. They didn't really ask for it, so they think, or anyway. And I wanted to be a resource so people feel they're not alone, know that they're not going crazy, and there's actually a lot of benefits to this thing they're going through that I call a spiritual awakening. It's just some sort of process. That's the most fitting name that I've come up with.
Okay. And how would you specifically define a spiritual awakening? If someone is going through a specific process, how do you discern between, how do you classify a spiritual awakening?
All right. I would say a simple way of looking at it is it's coming into alignment with the true self, like the core real you underneath the layers of conditioning that all of us to varying degrees acquire throughout our life. We would grow up, we have parents that say, you're Victor, okay, I'm Victor. And oh, you're shy. Oh, and we go through life accumulating all these definitions about ourselves that might not necessarily be who we are in truth as a soul, if you want to look at it like that. And the awakening process is when you start to unravel all those layers. They just start coming undone, and you go through this kind of a wild process where you don't know who you are anymore. You kind of lose touch with the who you previously thought you were, so that you can come into the awareness of who you actually are as a soul. I know it sounds kind of strange, but that's the best way I would phrase it, honestly.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with that as well, because when we have this society conditioning, we have conditioning as being these human beings here and wherever we live and however we are grown and developed. And when we challenge that and when we begin to think outside of that experience that we're having just here as a physical entity, then we begin to learn so much more about ourselves and can express ourselves in many ways and uncover these hidden truths that we all have.
Exactly. Yeah. Spot on. Right. Nice.
So for you, how did you go about, how did you have your spiritual awakening? What events took place and how did it progress to where you are now?
Okay. I would say that it started with, I was listening to music one day and there's a song I used to dig, and it was called Third Eye. You know, opening your third eye. Some of you might have heard of that. So I looked into like, how do you open your third eye? What is the third eye? And so I looked up, so I bought a book on it, and I did these meditations to open your third eye, which is just kind of like a point in your forehead where you can like see lights and stuff. And it worked. And I just became really intrigued by the idea of a third eye. And this all was kind of going on in parallel with me. I used to grow my own psychedelic mushrooms, and I would take the mushrooms and I would like explore my consciousness and just kind of like meditate and stuff. And I was like really focusing on my third eye one day while on these mushrooms, and all of a sudden I had this crazy feeling of like a golf ball sized knot of energy traveling up my spine, and it just kind of pooled in my head and exploded in this crazy white light. I know it sounds nutty. It was nutty. And I was like, what the hell was all that? Were you just tripping, man? You know, anyway, so that's kind of what I said. Okay, you're just having a psychedelic experience, man. Some things happen. But then after that point, when I was completely sober, I would have that same phenomena of this very tangible energy rushing up my spine, exploding out of my head, so much to the point where I would have to just lay down and like let this energy do its thing, hoping I survive it. It was so powerful. And that after that point, I would say that's when I was like officially in the awakening process, where I would have a lot of the other kind of wild experiences that come along with it. But that was how it kind of began for me, unexpectedly. I wasn't trying to achieve or do that, but I did, and then there was like no turning back, and I didn't know what was happening to me.
Very interesting, very interesting. I can't say that I am familiar with that experience. I've not had an experience like that. I think everyone's spiritual awakening, is definitely different, but that is very interesting to hear that. And I have heard other people who have had that kind of unexpectedly. It's sometimes it can be triggered by some kind of event that happens, like some kind of trauma or some kind of very negative experience that the person goes through, and then they somehow gain this ability to be able to overcome it, and then that whole awakening process happens.
Yeah, exactly. What I described is, sorry, were you going to say something more? I apologize.
No, you can go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say that, yeah, what I described is by no means like I agree with what you, it's not like begins for everyone. It was just what happened to me. And I talked to a lot of people, and oops, sorry, I lost you there for a second.
No, I can still see you.
You can see me? Okay, I can't see you for some reason. Okay, no worry, I'll roll with it. But it's different for everybody. Like you said, some people have a tragedy. Some people have nothing really at all happen, and they just find themselves in the midst of this process. It really is highly individual.
Absolutely, yeah. And for my own experience, I don't feel as though there was ever really a defining moment for me. There was not a moment that I can really look back at and go, that was what really changed it. Because there were many experiences that I've had that there were a lot of moments of all these little things that added up, and they really have changed my life. So I feel as though I've kind of always been this way, always had like this spiritual awakening in a sense, and I'm just still going through that all the time. I'm always learning and growing. It's like I'm not the same person I am month to month because of all the new information, how much I change.
Yeah, I totally agree. Now, like, being in, I would say, in it more, obviously, the awakening process, I can now, like, just like you, look back at my life and see how I've been sort of transforming and going through a lot of the same aspects my entire life. I battled addiction, and through the addiction and overcoming it, I went through a whole bunch of, like, self-discoveries and growth spurts and whatnot. And it's I agree. It's sort of like this continual thing that you just kind of realize you're on. And then the awareness, once you realize you're going through this process, then you can kind of treat it as such, treat life as an opportunity to grow from and whatnot. And but yeah, I agree. It's been the same for me as well.
Very interesting, very interesting. And something that I think would be interesting to get your perspective on as well, for me, I've had several moments where I feel as though going through my journey, it's like my chakras are beginning to activate, as I can just feel it going up and up as I progress through life. And how I describe this is, there was a moment many years ago. I was I didn't like who I was. I was very self-conscious of myself. And then I learned to overcome that. And I felt as though I became more grounded in who I was. I understood who I was more. So that was kind of like the root chakra phase. And then from there, the energy just continued to flow upwards. And then once it got to my heart, it was like, okay, I have a blockage here. Almost like how I visualized it is like this brick wall. And this brick wall is preventing me from moving forward. And a lot of times I end up meeting someone in my life who completely changes my life in some way. And it just so happened that I had met someone who had changed my life in some way, and then that heart blockage kind of like broke down. So then it was moving on to the next phase, which was, speaking and being able to voice my opinions better and more clearly. And then I got to that phase, and I think that's where I'm still currently at, slowly. It happens over a progress of several years. So it's like, well, what is next? What is the next phase in this process?
Right, right. Yeah, that's interesting. You know, I hear the way you describe it. A lot of people have it that way, where it's sort of a linear progression up the chakra levels, you could say, from the root and so forth that you described. For me, it's been more like it's jumped around. It hasn't been like,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying, not linear like that. But yeah, what you were saying, how like just my own subjective experience, the chakras do seem to be correlated. The chakra energy, the sensation of a blockage. Sometimes you can actually feel the tightness and the contraction. And it oftentimes is ironically sort of associated with some sort of external circumstance and your emotional state and your beliefs. And it's all kind of connected. And then by resolving your life situation or redefining your beliefs, then you feel like the energetic flow where that wall seems to dissipate. And then you feel really good and open again. And then it goes to like the next chakra or the next life lesson where you're temporarily blocked until you figure it out.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's always curious for me because, I mean, everyone's going to have this different experience. And I always, from my own experience, I wonder, well, what's going to happen when it continues to progress even more? How is my life going to be as it continues to progress? And how am I going to be several years from now? And it's just very interesting because you can't really predict that, because when you're changing all the time, you can't foresee anything, because anything could happen at any moment.
Yeah, that's part of the fun, I think. It's like, you know, I think if it seems to be progressively getting better, my life, my inner calm and a lot of different aspects of myself have improved throughout this awakening. But it is so highly individual. Yeah, it's really hard to anticipate where it's going. But all I know is that I'm on a momentum of my life improving as a result of, you know, viewing it from the perspective of me going through an awakening, and I'm cool with that. I'll enjoy the surprises as they come.
It's great. So what would you say then to people who are trying to have a spiritual awakening, who are trying too hard to get this to happen? What do you think there is like a problem with that?
I would say that a lot of people might be if someone really wants, if they're really finding themselves staying up at night wanting a spiritual awakening, I would honestly think they're in it. They just don't really know it. I don't think it's something that even enters the mind of someone unless they're actually already sort of in it, or at least very close. And, you know, I had that experience where I was like, I'm going through something. It's not, sometimes it just sneaks up on people and they realize they're exhibiting some of the symptoms that I talk about in a lot of my videos that, again, correlate with the awakening. So it's not something I would say someone should seek out. It's that if you have that in your mind that I want to awaken, I really want to find who I really am and as a soul, as a spirit, then you're in the club or whatever. You're already in it.
Yeah. And as I always see it, when you try too hard to achieve something, it often doesn't get to where you want it to be. So usually you just have to allow these things to happen, because they will happen on their own when the time is right.
Yeah, I see. Okay, I see where you were saying with that. I totally agree. A lot of times, what we really want, or whenever we say, "I need this to happen. I really want this badly," it's like we don't get that because we don't actually need it. We just think we do. And it's better for us to learn the lesson that we're already complete and have what we need in this moment, rather than insisting our life should or needs to be differently. Yeah, just the relaxation and the allowance is a faster route to getting the awakening or anything else you want, really.
So then, with regard to that, what do you think are some things that could help someone go through a spiritual awakening? If they're all new to this, what could help them go on that path?
Okay, I think the most important part is a very sincere desire. And I'll give some other more practical tips. But rather than being like, you know what, Eckhart Tolle or so-and-so is awakened, and that's awesome. I really wish I had that, you know, because it'd make my life a little easier and my job not suck so much. You know, that's not a really genuine desire. But if you just have that genuine, like, feel like, yes, I really want to know myself, I really want this, then that tends to bring into your life the different tools or techniques or whatever that are going to actually work for you. But in addition to that, there's a lot of like conventional ways of doing it, just by doing like yoga. Kundalini yoga is a very powerful way of sort of creating that experience I talked about earlier in a more natural and less over the top way. So I would say, if for those of you watching who really like want to do it, I would take a Kundalini yoga class or start doing that. I think that's one of the most powerful, safest, natural ways of doing it.
That's interesting. I've never actually done that sort of yoga. So I mean, it's something I think is interesting to me, but I've never actually personally done it at this point. So maybe someday, but I haven't done it yet.
Yeah, it's not necessary. It's just like, that's just off the top of my head. It's sort of designed to do that. It's designed to awaken your Kundalini. It's designed to put you in the awakening process, essentially.
Yeah.
So yeah, if some people are like, you know what, I don't want to deal with that, that's fine. You have another way, and you'll find something that works for you. As we were saying, many times it just happens on its own.
Mm-hmm. So if someone is going through this spiritual awakening, and what do you think are some things that are very damaging to this awakening process and spirit and your physical, mental, spiritual self?
I would say not following your heart, not really following your dreams, not following your intuition, and ignoring the nudges of your heart and your spirit. You can look at it in some sort of airy fairy way. You don't have to. I'm just saying, like, sometimes you just have a strong intuition to do something or to pursue something, and in the moment it can feel very real and plausible, but then it's so common that our minds come in and say, you know what, that's not realistic. That's who people are going to think you're strange. How could you do this? You're already, and then we don't. And then we sort of resist our true self in a sense. So that's probably the only way to damage it is just to boldly ignore what you know in your heart is asking you to do.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. It's so many people that I know are just, they're not really doing what they really want to do in life. They're, working a job that they do not like. They do not like their living situation. They do not like anything about their life, but they find it so difficult to actually change that because they don't know how to change that. Because it could be scary to go about that change. Now, what do you feel as though some of the physical aspects of the spiritual awakening, what can help and hinder in that regard?
Well, for someone who's already going through it, what will help is to really just honor your body, honor the reactions you get from anything physical. Like, some people will say you got to eat this way, but if you might eat that way and it makes you feel horrible. When you go to the awakening, essentially you become extremely sensitive to everything. The perception of all the input you get and the sensory stimuli you get is just very heightened, and you can very easily tell what feels good and what doesn't feel good. So a simple way is to avoid the things that don't feel good, even though you might have read it's ideal or something, and really just listen to your body. And again, the other side of the coin is the opposite. Ways to hinder it would be to deny and invalidate your own personal subjective experience to a philosophy, to a food, to a style of dressing, anything, and just really honor what you really are feeling like you should be doing, and then act accordingly. Even though oftentimes it goes way against the grain of society, way against the grain of what your parents think, way against your own beliefs, but just, you feel your way through life, and again, honor those feelings. I would say that would be the best bet.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly agree with that, because regarding what you said about specific diets and foods and everything, I hear so many people, it's like, this diet is superior for this reason, but not everyone can go on this diet for this and that reason. So does that mean that they are any less inferior than person A? And that's just not how it is.
Right.
And I think a lot of people may be able to, regarding that, I've heard a lot of people say, like, there's certain energies about the food that they eat, that they like this and they don't like to eat that. And that certainly has a lot of validity to that as well. But again, it does come down to an individual basis on what that person wants to do, where they currently are, because where they currently are may not be where they are a year or two from now. They could change.
Yeah, that's a good point. Honestly, I was a personal trainer for a decade, so that sort of thing has always been honestly irritating to me. The projection of what I eat this and it's great, and therefore everyone needs to. That's kind of out there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found, just my own experience, again, working with people, everyone is so different. If you give 100 people the same diet, maybe 40% of them are thriving.
Mm-hmm.
20% are like okay, and the other one are like just doing horrible. It's about, as I said before, honoring your own body. And I found specifically during the awakening that me and a lot of the people I work with, your body will go through various stages where for a while you might feel like you got to eat really light, like only like fruits and vegetables, and you feel like heavier foods, just you can't handle it. But then all of a sudden you crave the heavier foods. And I find it's best just to be open, because I've been all over the spectrum, hardcore raw vegan, because that's what seemed ideal at the time. And then going back to eating heavier foods and then back again. It's like I've been all over the place because the awakening is just so dynamic. And again, the most important thing is just tuning everyone out. Everyone's got an opinion about diets, and you just listen to your body.
Yeah.
That's my advice anyway.
Yeah, it's that resistance primarily that is a hindrance. And it can come in many, many forms. So, food is just one of those forms it can manifest in. I think it manifests also in addictions people have, addictions to not just drugs, but addictions to technology people have. People always on their phone all the time. That's a big distraction, I feel. Or just many, many other things, such as various kinds of medications that can perhaps hinder someone in some way when they don't want to work on the real problem. So they use that to kind of essentially not really tackle the problem, but just to escape from it. So it can come in many, many forms.
Yeah. And you know what I always like to point out, because a lot of people will they'll read or they'll hear the conventional advice that you're sort of talking about, how you got to do this, you shouldn't do this, avoid this. And that's all in a sense very true, and I agree. But also I always like to remind people that it's a long thing. Like we're all kind of doing our best. Well, you know what? Maybe, like I said, maybe I have so much on my plate that I really can't focus on improving my diet. I know if I ate more healthy, it would be better for me. But right now I'm got this chaos going on, and people, contact me on antidepressants, and oh my God, I got to get off them. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? If you feel really strongly getting off them, then get off them. But otherwise, don't beat yourself up, because we can't fix everything about ourselves all at once. So on one level, it's important to honor yourself and make the improvements, even though they're uncomfortable. At the same time, not beat yourself up if you just go around like comparing yourself to some kind of perfect ideal, that we're maybe striving toward, but not quite there yet, most of us.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a slow progress getting there. But I think if you have an idea in mind and you have an end goal of where you want to be, you tackle it one at a time and you end up getting there. But if you beat yourself up like, oh, why am I not experiencing this? Why am I not feeling this way? I need to stop this and that. You can't tackle it all, just as you said.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So my next question for you then is, how do you differentiate between the ego and the higher self?
Well, for one, the higher self is never fear-based. It's never warns you or anything like that. I associate divinely inspired thinking, you could say, as you could feel you feel really good. You feel very hopeful, very positive. You feel connected. You're optimistic. You're like, yes. Oh my goodness. And then the ego comes in and says, are you sure about that?
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't think this all out. And then you go, oh shit. Oh, that's the ego coming back.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not as bold as that, I realize. Sometimes it's not easy to differentiate. Sometimes it's confusing. It might seem like, well, I want to do this, but there's all these legitimate concerns. Is that my ego being like negative, or are these things that are sort of an issue? It's not easy, and it just takes practice, honestly. But I found that what I can rely on is there are times when it is obvious, like the next step in my life. It's always like it comes in an idea that feels very good, and then I do my best to go in that direction, expecting the fluctuations of higher self and ego to kind of have the battle on my shoulders or whatever, like the angel and devil throughout.
Cool. Yeah, that's a very, very interesting that you mentioned, the positive and then the doubtful being the separation. And that's kind of how I have my own experience with it, because I can definitely discern between that higher self and the ego self, and often the ego self is much more, as you put it, kind of doubtful of certain things, whereas my higher self is more like, just continue to progress forward. You have an idea in your mind and you can accomplish that. You just got to keep working on it. You can't be giving up on it. Just maybe change a few things here and there, but it's all about that progression forward, not about stopping and then looking back at past issues.
Yeah. I also find that once you, like for me, like once I really found something I'm passionate about, like my YouTube channel and stuff, and I started kind of going forward, like you said, I had an idea in my mind of what I wanted to do. I found that the progression towards that really flared up the ego. I ran into a lot of my doubts. Are you good enough? Are you sure? All these different, like, some of them can seem more legitimate than others, but yeah, it's sometimes it's best to just kind of ignore them and follow what you already sort of set out to do in a kind of a bull-headed way, ignoring the ego as best you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but at the same time, it's also not. It's impossible to also completely ignore the ego. That's just it. It's there for a reason to help you in some way, to help you rationalize the situation or think something through. But it's like I think that is the biggest hindrance on a lot of people. It really is.
Yeah, I agree. I'm unable to ignore mine 100%.
Yeah.
Well. But yeah, it's not also something to be resisted as bad or even negative. It just it's like a computer that spits out information based on the past, whatever you're doing in the moment. And sometimes it's useful and necessary to navigate the practicality of life. And it's about, like you said, it's an interesting harmonization that seems to be attempting to happen with a lot of us going through this process. It's not that the ego is bad. But it's also at the same time not allowing it to run your life completely. It's kind of a balance.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And it's about finding that balance and learning how to manage that balance, because you can master most things just by working on it a bit. You may seem uneven at first, but once you learn how to do it, then it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah.
So my final thing here I wanted to ask you is, is there any other advice, or what would you say to someone who was going through this spiritual awakening journey? Is there any other advice or helpful words you could give them to aid them along?
Sure. Yeah. You know what? I find a pattern. A lot of people going through this are looking for like the right passive types of traditional techniques. Like I need to do more yoga and meditate and all, and that's all good. I'm on top of that. But I say it can be very helpful and accelerate the awakening to look at your life, your everyday life experience, as just as spiritual as anything else. For example, say I'm at a bar and I'm single and I find someone attractive and I really want to talk to them, but I'm very nervous, but I make myself do it. To me, that is a sign of incredible spiritual progress, and that will accelerate your growth more so than, you know what, I'm not ready to talk to them, I'm going to go home and I'm going to meditate. That's sort of like, it's about being bold and challenging your own fears and limitations, like we were saying, in pursuit of that goal, that vision we have in our heart and in our minds. And I see that as the fastest way to spiritually evolve, is to follow your dreams very boldly and then go through the transformation that is usually catalyzed and initiated on that road, rather than, again, just like the basic simple stuff that's kind of easy.
I completely agree with that, and that's something that I have experienced a lot too, because early on I felt as though, I have to meditate to experience this and that. I have to do this to have this and that. And then it came to a point just over the past few years, it's like, while that is very helpful to me, and it has helped me a lot over the years, it's not the only thing. And it's like my entire existence is this this spiritual awakening journey, and it's this progression of balancing myself and learning about myself, and it's just I can incorporate all those spiritual aspects in the work that I do and everything essentially. And I think that's kind of how it is. You just have to channel that all through whatever you enjoy doing. It doesn't have to be meditation; it can be something else entirely.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree. Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. So there were a few questions here that I had seen in the chat. Oh, your camera. There we go. Your camera's back. If anyone else wants to ask any questions, now's the time to do so, because there are a few questions here that I saw.
Okay.
So,
cool.
Okay, so someone asked here, would you consider your third eye to be an advanced version of intuition?
No, I would see the third eye more as a component of your intuition in a sense. Like if your third eye is open, you tend to be more intuitive, but I wouldn't look at it in terms of levels of advanced or not advanced and needing your third eye to be open to be intuitive or anything like that. Again, it's just kind of I wouldn't look at it that way personally.
Okay. And a related question to that is how do you open the third eye?
Well, there's a lot of different methods to do it. You can search on Google or YouTube how to open your third eye. You'll see different meditations and stuff. What worked for me was a combination of a few things: third eye specific meditations, cleaning up my diet, and really becoming really healthy, and just the persistence. I would do these things, meditations every day as best as I could. And then at the same time, like you were saying in the beginning, not being so obsessed about it, just kind of chilling out and not like thinking you need it to be open, because sometimes you can block it that way. So kind of like doing your best, but then sort of being like, okay, if it opens, it opens, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah. I certainly agree with that. That's something that I've been through. It's like, I have to experience this. I have to do with this. And then I don't have to do that, but I have done certainly a lot of meditations regarding chakras and the third eye, and that's all very nice and helpful, but ultimately that's not what's going to open it. It's going to be all the other things that I do as well. That's going to do that.
Exactly.
Okay, have you or would you ever try the, let's say, deprivation tanks? I'm not sure what that is. You know what that is?
I do. Yeah, I've done them. They're awesome. They're sensory deprivation tanks where you lay in like a little dome full of like, I don't know, 8 or 10 inches of water with a lot of Epsom salt. So you just float there. The water's at your body temperature and it's soundproof and lightproof. So you're deprived of the senses for a while. It's awesome. Yeah, it wasn't for me the psychedelic sort of experience that some people say. But I'm sure it could be though. For me, it was just very peaceful and relaxing, and it helped me enter the meditative state in a general sense very easily and quickly. So it's very helpful and healing. If you're intrigued by it, yeah, I would say go for it.
That's interesting. I've never actually heard of that. That sounds really interesting.
You check it out. You probably dig it. Yeah, they're nice.
Yeah, it sounds really fascinating. So how do you physically feel when a chakra opens wide?
Open.
Mm-hmm.
It's different for everyone. There's varying degrees of it, but for me, it feels very where like at one point you can like focus on your heart and you feel like you just sense into it, and you feel like tension and contraction. When it's open, you feel like a very sense of spaciousness in the area, as well as sometimes just positive energy in that area. Absolutely.
I certainly agree with that as well, because that's been something that I have definitely worked on like the past year or two. And that has made such a big difference, because if I'm ever doubtful of myself, if I'm ever feeling very negative of myself, I just do like a heart meditation, just focus on that area, and it helps so much. And you can just feel this energy. And for me, it's like this, I don't really know how to describe it. You can just feel this sensation, sometimes like a tingly sensation or kind of like a bit of like a pressure that's there, but it feels like a very pleasant sensation. It feels very positive. Yeah. So Yeah, I think that is great there. Let's see. Oh, someone asked here if this let's see, hang on. Yeah, I think I'm not sure where this person. Okay. Well, I'll just kind of look at this one question here. It says someone asking about relaxation, anti-stress, anti-anxiety meditations. Have you ever? I guess have you ever done those, or has that helped you?
Yeah, any meditation for the most part will do that because they're almost all of them are relaxing. Some I would say like a type of meditation that is very simple. Like I'll just give you one, a mantra meditation. That's where you just focus on a word in your mind. You can just think in your mind, you close your eyes, and as you breathe in, you think in your mind, I. As you exhale, am. And you just focus on that one thing, I am, and you will relax big time. Yeah, most meditations will accomplish that though. That's not a special one or anything.
Wow. Yeah, that's really. I've never done that specific one, but I have done a lot of meditations for a lot of that stress, anxiety, all those types of problems. Because back when I was dealing with that a lot, meditation was the number one thing that had helped me through that, and it's been the number one thing that has helped me through a lot of those problems. So yeah, it's just absolutely amazing. You can do guided meditations. There are plenty online. You can do just your own meditation with music or without music. It's what I say is that don't rely solely on like a guided meditation, because what if you can't access that? What if you're out somewhere and you need to learn how to calm yourself down? You can't just go and do that. You need to do it all. Learn how to do it yourself.
Yeah, I like that. I agree. A lot of people I know do them, and I don't think they're bad or anything. I do, I don't do them actually, but I have.
Mm-hmm.
But I always try to I have coaching clients, and I always make them do the kind I just suggested because for the same reason. It's important to be able to put yourself in that state without the external source. So, I don't often hear that mindset, so it's refreshing to hear.
All right. I think we have two or more questions here. So someone here is asking, what would you recommend for someone struggling with complex PTSD?
Well, that's a hard one. I would recommend. There's a book I read not too long ago. Another YouTuber named Teal Swan. She has this book called The Completion Process, and it's actually been very popular among people in the military with PTSD. It's just a way of healing those issues and healing those wounds, kind of like safely allowing those crazy emotions and experiences to kind of come back up to the surface with little techniques involved to heal them. It'd be a lengthy thing to go into any more deep than that, but
yeah.
But that's a solid book. I recommend it to other people for that exact reason. So I have no affiliation with her. It's just a book that I feel would be very helpful in that case, or a process like that.
Yeah, I've not personally read that book, but I definitely have overcome my own PTSD and past trauma related issues. Essentially just with my own self-improvement, my own self-growth, and learning to accept those past aspects, those past events that happened to me, and not look at them so negatively. And just, there is a lot to it. You're right, you can't explain it all, but it is possible. So I think a lot of people have doubt in their mind, like, I can't do this, I can't do this. And when you doubt yourself, that's what deters you. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yep. And the last question here, and this is an interesting one. This may sound funny, but when you let your higher self out fully, do you ever feel as though you are taller? Interesting question.
You know what? In a sense, I could see that. I know that, consciousness, our consciousness, us, who we kind of are at the core, underneath the physical, is quite big. Some people label it as auras, like we give out an aura. Some people can actually claim to be able to see them.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you feel because your true identity, again, is not necessarily limited to the local flesh and sometimes people do have an experience, I've had it as well, where you feel bigger than your body. So I could see where someone would put it like they feel taller.
Very interesting. Yeah, I'd never actually thought about that, but now how you described it, that certainly makes a lot of sense. Yeah, because even though we're physically, you know, this body, our energy goes much further out that we can't usually see. So
yeah.
So I think that concludes our discussion here. Is there anything else you wanted to bring up or talk about?
Not necessarily. I just want to thank you for having me on. Thank all the people for watching. It's been fun. I've enjoyed myself. I enjoyed answering the questions and then hanging out and talking with you. So it's been a real nice discussion. I don't have a lot of people in my life that I can go into these deeper discussions with. My wife, luckily, my little kid, but so it was a pleasurable experience for me. And just thank you very much.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And for anyone else watching this, and including yourself as well, when this stream is done, it is available as a video on my channel. So anyone could come back and watch it. If you're just now getting here to the stream, it's about to end, and you can re-watch it. It'll be the video, same link and everything. So I thank you for coming on this my channel here, and I appreciate the discussion. It was very enlightening and very informative, especially for me, especially being able to relate to a lot of the things that you teach in your videos. And Victor has a YouTube channel and a website, and I posted the YouTube channel down in the description for anyone who wants to check him out, which I recommend because I think he's very informative with what he teaches.
Thank you.
Okay.
Flattered to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye, everyone.